And welcome to Parenting on Empty. This is podcast number 3.
Well, that's not the way I would do it.
All right, today we are talking about being set in your ways. Is being set in your ways a good thing or a bad thing? Now, I've written down 5 scenarios to help you determine if you might be set in your ways. Here they are. If you dig through your coin purse to give the cashier the exact amount of money that your item cost because you just don't want any change, you might be set in your ways. If you get annoyed at lighted intersections because you know that eventually the red light is going to change, you might be stuck in your ways. If your least favorite insect is the caterpillar because you know that in the springtime it goes through a major change, you might be set in your ways. If your least favorite season of the year is fall because you know that the leaves on the trees are going to change, you might be set in your ways. And if you refuse to ever go to Buckingham Palace in London, England, because you know that the palace guards regularly change, you might be set in your ways. So, are you set in your ways?
I must be off the hook because none of those bother me.
Well, then you're not set in your ways.
I'm not set in my ways. We're done.
Good. So I thought we would talk about the pros and the cons. What are the good things about being set in your ways as you are parenting on empty? And what are the bad things about being set in your ways while you are parenting on empty?
I think one of the benefits of being an older parent is that we are semi-set in our ways. And the good part about that is it offers stability. We're not constantly throwing everything up for grabs and trying to figure out who we are individually, who we are as a couple, who we are as parents, who we are as social entities, all of that, who we are in our jobs. We kind of had many, many years to figure most of that out. And so we bring a structure and a stability, I think, to parenting that parents who are young when they have their children kind of have to figure out on the fly. And so it works out great since I have less energy to figure those things out, that they're already, for the most part, determined.
I agree with that. I think that in being set in your ways or being established and being happy with who you are and not having to try to reinvent yourself every 3 months or adapt to a situation, I think that's good. I've said that about myself these last few years, that I'm happy with who I am. I'm not trying to be somebody else. I don't feel the need to try to change or to be somebody else or to be something in order to make somebody happy. So in that way, I'm set in my ways as far as who I perceive myself to be, good, bad, or otherwise.
And I think for the most part, that allows you to bring some confidence to parenting that you don't already, or that you don't come equipped with if you don't have some of those years behind you. And that means that when you make mistakes, you make them confidently.
That will transition into the bad parts of
yes,
being
and that would be the bad part. That I think the challenge in being set in your ways is kids are disruptive and they are constantly changing. So you kind of have to keep up with them. When they're toddlers, the main change is that you physically are taxed. You're always chasing after them. You're always having to provide boundaries because they're constantly challenging. Is this okay? Is this okay? Is this okay? Oh, it wasn't okay yesterday, but is it okay today? And they are in a constant state of flux. And then just when you kind of figure out the whole toddler thing and you get physically fit, then they move into the next stage, which is maybe more of an emotional and intellectual challenge where they're changing that way a lot more. And you may find yourself sort of wishing for the days when all you had to do was chase after them, because that was a whole lot easier. And that's kind of what you were used to. And I know that when Mariah, our older daughter, moved into the preteen years and kind of began going through puberty, I had a really hard time transitioning from the way we used to approach her and deal with her, and then kind of the new way that we needed to begin dealing with her, seeing her as not an adult, but a pre-adult, a semi-adult, on her way to adulthood. So allowing a few more freedoms, allowing, even in her relationship with us, not being quite so authoritative, and allowing her to make more decisions on her own behalf, even if her decision's going to be a bad one, as long as it's not one that's going to have really devastating repercussions, allowing her to bear the brunt of that.
Right. We were talking about that just a few weeks ago, in allowing her to be her own person, or to live a certain way that she is going to do anyway. We were talking specifically about how her room is kept. Is it messy? Is it neat? Are her clothes folded and put away in the closet, or are they lying crumpled on the floor? And of course, her decision is to do the latter, to just leave clothes where they lie, and leave the room in any kind of condition that it happens to be at that time, which drives you nuts. It drives me nuts too. I like things in a little more orderly fashion. But realizing she's getting into that teenage years, and maybe it's okay. That's not a battle worth fighting. We liked the old way when we could arrange things for her and keep her room in a certain way that we liked. But now to adjust to the change, that she is going to have some input into how her room looks, and that input isn't something that we necessarily appreciate, but that's okay. We can change our thinking to say, if that's the way she wants to live in that little part of her world, that's okay.
And even things like, this is a really petty example, but I have always asked her to wear a dress to church or a skirt. There's very little in her life that requires her to wear anything other than pants. And she's a girl, and I would like her to understand that there are other dressing options other than jeans, and that Sunday's a good day to do that. And so up until, about a year ago, that was kind of just a given. She knew this is what she needed to wear on Sundays. But then her friends aren't dressing that way. And so she began to kind of just start wearing pants and then start wearing jeans without asking and without consulting us or anything like that. And I basically had to come to a decision. Is that really an important value? I don't think church is anything magical that you have to dress up for. I don't think that wearing a dress is more holy or spiritual or moral than wearing pants. It was just, I would like her to understand that part of femininity. I would like her to understand that women can wear dresses and pants, both. And I'd like her to know how to walk in them, dresses, and how to sit down in them. I teach at a university, and honestly, there are some of our young women who, the first time they put a dress on, they don't know how to sit or how to walk because they've never, ever worn them. And I think that that's sad. It's just part of what it is to be a woman. So I would like her to. But you mentioned it's not a battle worth fighting. I kind of have decided that's not a battle worth fighting. I invested many years in teaching her that dresses are fun, interesting, attractive, an option. She's choosing now to not choose that option. But when she gets older, she may recapture that and decide, yeah, on my own, I think I'm going to wear a dress.
Right.
And that's a change that I have just had to adjust to, even though it still irks me. I don't like seeing her go to church in jeans, particularly if they're the same jeans that she wore all week at school. It's kind of, really?
So perhaps you are still set in your ways. You're just putting it on hold.
Well, yeah, that's actually a good insight, that I'm not sure that you're ever less set in your ways. It's just you recognize the right of another person to have their ways as well, and that your children are other people.
Right.
And that part of parenting is allowing those other people to find their own set ways, as long as they follow moral and ethical guidelines. And to me, those are the things that you're inflexible on, the things that you say, I am set in my ways, and I am going to continue to try to impose those ways on you throughout the course of your life.
Okay, yeah.
Society does that. They impose certain rules on us. It's not okay when you're angry at someone to just haul off and hit them, even though you really would like to.
Mm-hmm.
Society says that's wrong. I think it's also morally wrong to just haul off and hit someone. So I would be pretty inflexible and very set in my ways on certain things that I think this is not something that's negotiable.
Right. I think understanding that it is okay to be set in your ways, to have that attitude, to say there are certain things I like and I don't see any need to change it, but to have it under control so it doesn't impact negatively the relationship you can have with your children, so it doesn't cause strife where you start to alienate your child because the conflict is so big that it becomes an issue you're always fighting. I think it's important to have control over that attitude about your being set in your ways so that it doesn't steal moments, valuable moments in the process of raising your child. I'll give you an example to illustrate that. Our youngest wanted to build a little treasure box, and she really likes building. And I do building too, but our attitudes and our philosophies about building are two different entities. So Michaela wants to build a box, and her method of building that box is to go to the scrap pile and just find some random pieces and start nailing them together. Of course, my attitude towards this building project is that you find some decent wood and you cut it in nice symmetrical shapes and you miter the corners so you have really nice neat corners, and you pre-drill those edges so that you don't split the wood with your nails, and you glue the edges and nail them together, and once you've got a nice symmetrical neat looking box, you sand it and finish it and stain it. Michaela is very opinionated about how she builds a box, and you just find some pieces. They don't have to be the same shape, and you nail them together, and it doesn't have to be a square, and it's not going to be since you didn't start with symmetrical pieces. And honestly, I found myself being very irritated through the whole process because that's not the way you build a box.
Because you're building for longevity and to make a product, and she's building for the joy of building.
Exactly. And I have a certain way that you build things, and I'm very set in that way. And it's a good way. It's time honored, and it's been proven that that's a very good way to build boxes. But if my attitude towards that way is it will prevail no matter what, then I will just continue to be angry at my poor little daughter because she's building the box the way she wants to. So I had the presence of mind to say, you know what, this is a moment. We're having a moment together, and it could be a very fun, a very good moment, or it could be a very frustrating moment. So fortunately, I had the presence of mind to say, you know, it really doesn't matter what kind of box we build. it's going to be a box, and it's going to be her box, and we're going to have a fun time building it. So I helped her put together this atrocious looking box for her to keep her treasures in. And it was a good memory. She enjoyed it, and she was excited because it was her box. She built it herself, and we had a fun time.
And if you had gone the other route and continued to harp on this is the way you have to make boxes, it would have robbed her of the joy of the moment. And if you do that enough times, the child doesn't keep coming back.
Correct.
And I don't think it's wrong. I mean, I would rather have a box that you've built than a box that she's built.
And
because
honestly, who wouldn't?
Who wouldn't? Yours is going to last. Yours is a product. And I guess that the hard part is distinguishing when is the time to impose standards and structure, and there is a right way, and kind of be stuck in your ways. And when is it okay just to let it go? Because it's not always okay to just say, whatever you want, however you want to do it, that's okay. But she's 5 years old. And really, I think what we're trying to do is just instill in her a joy. We want her to like building. She already really does like working with her hands and creating things. And at 5, she's probably not ready for mitering. At least with her personality, she's not. There might be some 5-year-olds that are. But she isn't particularly a precision-oriented child yet. Mm-hmm. And yet, at the same time, she is incredibly creative and loves to work with you and loves to pound nails.
Right.
So I think there can be sort of an incremental thing where we say, well, right now it's perfectly okay for you to make a box this way.
Right.
But then have a goal that maybe this summer we'll make a Christmas gift for Mom or for Mariah. And then you talk her through the process and say, when you're making it for someone else and it's a product they're going to have for a long time, you want to do these precise kinds of things with it.
She will grow into it.
Yeah.
And she's not set in her ways. She doesn't have the attitude of, that's the way I build boxes and I'm always going to build them
from
that
now
way.
on. Exactly.
Neither one of our children are set in their ways. They're constantly changing, just as we talked about earlier. They'll change all the time. So we have to decide, can we change with them and allow them to change? Or are we going to fight against that and say, this is the way we do things, and this is the way we act, and this is the way we solve problems, and we never let them have any input because it's too different or it's just plain wrong in our thinking. So I think, fortunately, the children are not set in their ways. They're going to change, and Michaela will learn how to make a box that has four
sides.
Four sides.
And you can close
if she wants.
If she wants.
Maybe she'll stumble on a new kind of art and she will become wildly famous beyond our dreams. And so our job is to give her the space to change, to grow.
I think another thing in this whole idea of being stuck in your ways is when you look at your children, I think it's our natural tendency to want to find categories and labels and boxes to put everybody in.
Yes.
And I think the thing that I have to constantly be reminding myself of is they are dynamic. And just because Mariah is a certain way right now, I need to be careful not to define her that way. Mm-hmm. And get kind of stuck in thinking that's who she is, because she is constantly changing. And she really surprises me with how dramatic some of those changes are. For example, the first 6 years of her schooling, she has been a non-academic. And when you asked her favorite subject at school, it would be recess.
Recess.
And second would be PE. And third, there would be nothing. And so I kind of just, because I'm an academic and because I love school and books and all of that, that was disappointing. And to make myself feel better, I just basically said, I guess she's never going to be that way. But this year, there's been this explosion of academics. She is liking to read. She's being vocal about liking reading. She's actually picking up a book on her own time and reading it without being told, and getting what it's talking about and liking it and wanting to get sequels. And she's doing homework on her own. She doesn't have to do it. She works ahead. She's come home a couple times and said, "Oh, we have really fun math right now." And my mouth drops open because I think, wait a minute, who are you? And I need to be very careful that I not communicate that to her, because I want her to grow and
Right.
change in this way. But kind of to protect my own disappointment, I had sort of categorized her and said, that's probably the way she's always going to be. And she would talk about when she would go to college. And in my brain, I was thinking, you may not go to college. I'm not sure you're college material. Mm-hmm. I never said it out loud to her, but I had kind of categorized her, because to go to college, if you hate education, is pain. Why would you do that?
Right.
And not everybody was cut out for college. So I want her to succeed, and I want her to enjoy her life. And if college was not the way that was going to happen, I needed to be okay with that. But in needing to be okay with that, I was categorizing her, and I was sticking her in this place.
Right. And if you, as you said, would verbalize that on a regular basis, you're programming the child to say, okay, I am not college material. I am
Exactly.
not academic. And they'll believe that.
Mm-hmm.
They will buy that hook, line, and sinker. And so they won't pursue academic things. They'll be happy to settle, to say, I'm just a social person. I'm an active person. I'll work with my hands, or whatever it is, and they'll stop growing intellectually, emotionally. I think it could do some serious damage if you are constantly programming your child the way you perceive them to be at a point in time, and get stuck in that way. That's some pretty dangerous stuff.
I agree. And I was very careful never to say anything. But I think that it comes out in the ways we treat them.
Right.
Unconsciously. And so even in the way I think, I need to be very careful about sticking anybody in a category, because it does influence them.
Yeah.
And it influences their development. And I never want to put limitations on either one of our kids.
And I think a good therapy for yourself and the child is to say, okay, I do have a tendency to be set in my ways, and because of that, I might be set in how I perceive my child. And so I'm going to do things that are going to break that mold and break that thinking.
Yeah.
If I don't think my child is academic, I'm going to take my child to the library a couple times a month. I'm going to buy my child some books that I don't think that they're going to really appreciate, maybe not read, but I'm going to do it anyway, giving them the opportunity to rise to the challenge.
Exactly.
I'll take them to cultural events.
And if nothing else, what that communicates is that you believe that they are capable of potentially doing anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
You are giving them options. You're providing them with platforms. And for me, the difficult part is just providing the option and the platform, and then being okay if they don't seize that.
Correct.
If they don't explore it, or if they do it inadequately or half-heartedly.
I think it's
letting
great.
That be okay.
I think it's great therapy. One thing that we like to do at birthday parties and Christmas or events where you're giving gifts, you like to have a positive response. Oh, great, clothes, fingernail polish, whatever it is, tickets to Disneyland. You love to have those kind of responses. But I think if you're really wanting to break out of that mold of this is the way I think my child is and they're always going to be that way, you may have to do some things where the child's going to open up the present and say, oh, great, a book.
And you may even have to do some activities where the child is somewhat uncomfortable.
Exactly.
We both felt that our daughter was lacking some things in her understanding of God and the Bible. And so you decided, I'm going to meet with her once a week for a series of, I think it was 3 months, something like that. Mm-hmm. And just go over some real basic things about what it means to believe in God and to call yourself a Christian. She was not terribly excited about that. First of all, the one-on-one and study was one of the words, Bible study. That didn't really thrill her a lot. And she was kind of intimidated a little bit and wondered, what's it going to be like? And it was in place of her going to our church, to a youth group where she would be with friends. And so she's being taken away from her friends, which she completely did not enjoy. But the interesting thing is, at the end of those 3 months, she was very verbal about how good it was for her and how she felt like she understood God a lot better. She knew her Bible better. She felt closer to you. And she felt like she had achieved something.
What an incredible experience for me to be able to see her literally change some of her thinking and some of her attitudes. And not because I was telling her, you need to think this way now, you need to understand it this way now, but just to share with her experiences and share with her some truths that I found in Scripture. And we did it in a fun way, in a visual way. A lot of times we used object lessons and fun things like that to help communicate. And what a fun time for me to see her take that information and deal with it the way she was going to deal with it, and then come to some conclusions that caused her to think differently, mm-hmm. and hopefully causes her to act differently. And I think it has already.
I do too.
And she has said to me that when she goes to certain gatherings, she's thinking differently about the people around her and having compassion, more compassion for people around her, looking more carefully for perhaps needs that are out there. And I'm saying to myself, wow, this is a different side of Mariah that I've not seen before. And I've got the privilege to be able to see that, and had the foresight to be able to pay attention to that mm-hmm. process. That was a very rewarding experience for me.
She actually asked me the other day, she said, Mom, I don't know what's happened to me. And she goes on to describe her behavior at school. And she goes to a school where they have a mixture of grades 1 through 8. And so she has a lot of young kids, and they kind of adore her. And she said, I find myself being far more patient with them and going out of my way to listen to them. And especially the ones that everybody else just says, go away, we're tired of you. She says, I find myself feeling bad that they're being rejected, and I want them to know that they're cared for and that someone likes them and someone finds them important. And she says, I don't know where that's coming from. And I do believe that it's a direct result of you taking the time to help her learn what it means to practically live out our faith. Mm-hmm. And she sees it in herself, and she sees herself changing. And I think the more that she sees us treating her as a dynamic person, and us accepting change and embracing that life is kind of a roller coaster, and that sometimes it's happy and fun and sometimes it's not, and that you're okay throughout all of them, and that we're not stuck in it's got to be this way all the time, and there's only one way to look at life, and there's only one way to do things. I think the more that we provide that kind of atmosphere and role modeling, the more accepting she is that she has the potential for change, and that she can I see her actually making deliberate decisions. This is the kind of person I want to be. And she's beginning to work that out and turn into that kind of person. And even making decisions, I think, on our everyday life to spontaneously decide, let's just go to the beach. Mm-hmm. Even though the house needs cleaning, even though I have papers to grade, even though you have video projects that need to get done. And she knows all of those things are hanging over our heads and that we're responsible people. But sometimes we just say, forget it. We're just going to throw it all in. We're going to hop in the van and we're going to go to the coast and just spend a day together. That even those kinds of trivial decisions, I think, help to establish a worldview, a way of looking at life. That you seize the moment when it's there. Mm-hmm. And you are constantly prioritizing and deciding what is the most important thing today. What is the most important thing right now? And how do I achieve that? And there's never an opportunity to get stuck in the mud and set in your ways when you approach life that way.
Yeah, and as adults, as parents, we're happier for the whole process because we learn to be adaptable to the situation around us. So when something comes that's not the way we like it, we've learned how to adapt. And so we don't chafe against that and fight against it and turn it into a very unpleasant experience for all parties. We maybe even rejoice in it to say, yeah, this is different. And maybe it's not the best thing, but it's still part of life and we can embrace it and learn how to adjust to it and then move on from there.
I think an added benefit to all of that is I have never been bored. And I've never been bored with you. I've never been bored with our marriage. I've never been bored with our children. And I've never been bored with my job. And I think part of that, part of the reason for that is when you deny yourself the getting stuck, the looking at establishing the parameters of safety in your life, where you're unwilling to take risk, where you're unwilling to face changes, when you're unwilling to try new things, all of that, when you're pretty sure that you know the right way to do everything. And I have all those tendencies, mm-hmm. But every day I'm trying to make a choice to deny those tendencies. And I think when you do, you see the originality of every day. You see the potential in every moment. You embrace the unsettling and the challenging, even if it wears you out, and even if it scares the living daylights out of you, and even if sometimes it makes you feel very insecure. Because in the long run, it produces vitality, it produces life, right. It produces engagement, and that's enjoyable.